Well, Eric, getting things started here this week, of course, we're quickly approaching the end of August and just looking at some of those temperature rankings from those climate reporting districts that you like to look at every day is, we're kind of wrapping up quite a bit of a dry month for a lot of folks. I know you might be talking about some storms that are touching the southern plains this morning, but for the most part, it seems like there's been kind of a miss for a lot of areas. And so what do you got for us this week in terms of where we've been, kind of where we might see moving forward, especially as, we're kind of kicking off a little bit of a cooler start to the end of the month.
Yeah, I mean, take a look at this first graphic. Let me blow this up. That is the August precipitation ranks by climate district, right? Now, if you came off of the end of July and just like, what do you think August might look like? I would not, I mean, very few of us were predicting like this dry. We knew it was gonna be a little drier, but I mean, for most of the month, there was no southwest monsoon. That's finally going. We got very dry Missouri, most of Illinois, Arkansas, mid-south, all the way to the northeast. And where we had storms here, okay, it's a couple of places are showing above average precip. And of course, we saw the Pro Farmer Tour give us some huge numbers out of this area last week. But it's been pretty dry. And so another way to look at it is we just kind of say, well, let's now include that last week of July. That's the map that's on the left. I mean, if you include the last week of July, all of this was really wet and stormy. It just shows you how quickly in August it went over. But what I'm thinking about is as we look at the next 14 days compared to the last 30, that dash line is in the same spot on both of these maps. And you can see that, boy, you get just to the north and east of that line, and things are very, very dry, much cooler. And therefore, we expect to see some drought expansion. We've already watched drought expand. Just take a look at the most recent drought monitor. I mean, we saw drought degradation here. You can see it, a two-class change in the last month. And there's been pockets that have just kind of gone dry. So what changed, right? All summer long, it was open Gulf, tons of moisture, storms every day, flash flood records. And it's just like that. We flipped the script and now we're looking at something like this. Whereas over the next 10 days, I mean, everywhere that you see color on this map represents a place that has a high probability of measuring less than a tenth of an inch. And that includes my home state of Illinois, over to Kentucky, Indiana, getting into Ohio, and then back up into the Canadian prairie. While the West sees repeated daily monsoonal storms, there's this heavy rain that's already moved through, but is expected to move through again over the next several days down through the southern plains. This will be huge for winter wheat in this area, but they'll get that rain now. Weed pressure comes up now. They can get rid of those weeds right in time for wheat sowing. But I mean, this is the way it's shaping up. So you look at it and just put it all together into one map over the next 15 days. This is total accumulated precipitation. And I'm already out 10 days in the forecast. And you'll note that there are several counties in Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, all the way over to the Appalachian Mountains, where we're not expecting any rain at all. Meanwhile, you've got some places in here that might pick up 4, 5, 6 inches of rain on some of these huge storms. And the models are doing what they always do, which is way out at the very end. They're trying to bring in rain late, right? But this is September 7th. Like, I mean, we're so far out there in the forecast, you just got to take it with a grain of salt. And I'm talking about this area right in through here. So we think about all that, and you brought up temperatures. Well, this is what the high temperatures have looked like since June 15th. Okay, been a little hotter than normal in the Eastern Corn Belt, but it's not as though we're like top five. I mean, it's top 20, top 30 warmest summers for the daytime highs. What we have to remember is that it's an overnight low temperature conversation if you're in this part of the country. I mean, you look out there now it's a top five, top 10. So what I also found interesting about this comparison is that while we were hot overnight, take a look at some of the places around the country that were cool during the day, like California. I mean, that's that's crazy just to see that. But back to those hot nights, I did put together an interesting analysis where I looked at the departure from normal on the number of nights with the temperature greater than 70. So this is 71 degrees and above. And I noticed that there's a corridor in through here, like Indianapolis, down to parts of Kentucky, Tennessee, that they've had an extra 27 to 36 nights compared to average where the low temperature was above 70. So we're starting to see what this did to some of the yield numbers. And that was part of the reason I think you saw some of the pullback in the total yield estimate we got from the Pro Farmer Tour last week. Just something interesting to point out there. But I do want to show you that there are still places that have had both hot nights and hot days. And one of those spots is right here. See that 212? That is in Champaign County where I live. And in Champaign County, that 212, well, that's quite a few stress degree days above what we want, which is below 140. So we've been pulling ears here. We've seen tip back issues, which is likely from the hot nights and some of the hotter days. And we got a lot of ears that are about 16 round, but maybe 34 to 36 to 38 long. So in a field that a year ago was hitting 250 as a farm average, we're now down into that 215 to 225 range. And that's in Champaign County. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I love my home county, but it's an important county nationally for growing corn. So where are we with temperatures now? Well, we feel it's getting protected because the next 5 days it's pretty chilly. Even out day 5 through 10, it's pretty chilly. And then where's all the heat? It's in Canada. It's in Western Canada. It's in the Pacific Northwest. Even as we take this out further into that first week of September, we've got some pretty chilly temperatures. Now, let me just tell you something important about this before I give you a tropical update. Every long range weather forecast for this time period and the time period we're in right now was hot. They were all hot. They were all hot and stormy, and now it's cool and dry. I have no trust at all in any subseasonal forecast, Dawson, and I want you to think about that because I'm going to show you the new ones in just a few moments. But I do also want to point this out. There is some stuff going on in the tropics we have to pay attention to. It's not in the Atlantic. The Atlantic's going to calm down. It's in the Pacific. And in the Pacific, we are starting to see the MJO combined with typical Western Pacific tropical season that I think there's going to be an important signal that's coming out of here that's going to tell me to suggest that we need to be watching the mid-September timeframe for another kind of, well, widespread penetrating shot at some cooler air. Now, those are fine in mid-September, except for the fact that that's the normal time of year that the northern plains have their first frost. And it is just speculative. It's just based on a few things moving around. But I do think that we could get into another shot at cooler air. And then what'll be funny is the rest of September and October may go back over warm. But we do need to watch that mid-September time frame. And I'm telling you, you need to take this with a grain of salt, like about this big. Don't assume, it's the size of a basketball, the grain of salt that we're doing with this. But short-term predictability has been absolutely terrible as of late. So, Dawson, that's where I am. And if it sounds a bit frustrated, I am frustrated because I don't think anybody has a solid clue about where this spring is going to head. Or excuse me, where this fall is going to head. We haven't known since spring where it's going, but here we are in fall trying to figure it out as well.
Yeah, I mean, and you go back to our earlier discussions too about what the month of August was looking like. I remember you saying we were going to have a wash, rinse, and repeat time period for
Yeah.
maybe getting some more systems coming through in August, and it just really seems like that hasn't been the case. So, I mean,
Oh.
you were talking about an initialization bias from July that kind of didn't materialize. So, I mean, is it going to be kind of the same thing that we might have to watch out for when it gets to that September timeframe?
Yeah, I don't know, Dawson. I mean, it went from wash, rinse, repeat to get out of the shower, right? I mean, it was just kind of,
Yeah.
I mean, the first week of August did it. I mean, oh, it went cool. We saw storms and then it was just done. It just completely died. So here's what the two big models say September is going to look like from a precipitation standpoint. And is there any consistency in this? One's got dry plains, one's got wet plains. One's got wet, southeast, mid-south, the other one's dry. They both agree that we need to watch the tropics coming out of the Gulf. Maybe there's a system sitting in there some point in September, but they're terrible. They're both off their rocker. And you say, well, pick one, Eric. And I'm like, I don't know which one to pick. I'll be honest with you, I'm leaning more toward the GFS than anything. And that's actually not evidenced on the GFS's performance in North America, but elsewhere around the globe. So what's really being bothersome right now is this. Across the entirety of the landscape of global ocean temperatures, we've got a whole lot of warm water here while a La Nina is coming back. I mean, look where you currently are with respect to this being in La Nina territory. And why do I think the Atlantic is going to be, or excuse me, the Gulf is going to be active for tropical systems? It's still a hotbed for warm oceans. So the question is, what's the interplay between all this warmth here and all this cool there? What does history tell us? Well, as I told you last week, we've had 4 out of the last 5 falls have La Nina signals, and 4 out of the last 5 were dry. Yet I don't know. Are we going to get that? This is what the newest Climate Prediction Center forecast says. September, October, November. They're wet down here, mainly because of tropical, and then they're going dry in the southern plains. All right, I'm going to take it. This makes sense more to me on the right, the temperature pattern, just because we've seen more warm falls as of late. But what I think they're biting into here is a typical fall La Nina pattern, which is if you kind of just look at this line I'm drawing, especially if you're in this area, you just tend to be drier here when there's a La Nina going in fall. All right. But is La Nina the more dominant factor? The Climate Prediction Center says yes for winter. I mean, look at this. They're dry all south of that line and warm south of that line. This is your classic jet stream comes in, jet stream leaves. So keep it active here and keep it active there. But I'm telling you, every single La Nina has a different flavor. And this is not only going to be important for us to watch what happens for our fall and winter, but I think South America's going to have to pay attention to it as well.
Yeah, so I mean, you've been teasing South America more often recently as we're kind of getting going with a lot of their seasons, especially with the summer side of things. They're finishing up that winter corn harvest, starting to plant that summer corn. Kind of what are they thinking here in terms of the weather for what we could be seeing as a lot of that season is starting to ramp up?
Well, I still don't have a definitive answer if they can plan on September 1. I've heard that they could. I think they're going to do it no matter what. And it's one of those things where you're just going to do it and then ask for forgiveness kind of thing because they're looking at huge acres. They're looking at a big crop. Now, is it going to be historically large in terms of acreage? Yes, only because the trend is upward no matter what. But is it a 2% increase or 4% increase? I have no idea. What I do know is that the European model says early monsoon. Here we go. Get cranking. The GFS extended says no, there's not. The GFS extended, the map that's on the left, it follows much more closely to the next 14 days in terms of the forecast, which of course gets us a week to 10 days into September. And right now, there is no sign of an early monsoon. The position of the high pressure cell is not in the right spot to just dump in moisture. So I'm going to have to side, as I stated on there in that comment, I'm siding with the GFS extended right now and not making the early call for a big monsoon. And what I've generally learned from the Brazilian growers I work with is they're waiting on 2 inches of rain. They want to get a 2 inch rainfall, come in and just get that seed bed soaked. And then after that, they just tend to get more monsoonal rain. So it's going to be a question of does the season start in September? Is it start by mid-October? Or are we still waiting for them to finish planting by that second week of November? And if it's the latter scenario where they have delays because of weather, then all of a sudden South American weather is going to take a front lines in the market story because of them being delayed, and we're going to start to just really watch their weather carefully. If they come in firing on all cylinders early, then it's going to be a story of, how bearish is the market going to get as we go into fall. I think that'll be the way it's going to be if weather dominates headlines.
Yeah, I mean the general trend, of course, has been up, but it kind of seems like over the past few years, the percent increases have been declining. I don't know if that's just because they keep planting more and more, so of course those percentages might just naturally be smaller. But I mean, maybe they start to hold back. But yeah, if there's some weather issues, that could probably maybe impact acres a little bit, wouldn't it?
I think so. I think there's another thing going on here, and that is, I mean, you know this, margins in South America have shrunk over what they were 10 years ago.
Yep.
What was interesting for me this summer is that for the last 5 years, I have met with the same two groups of Brazilian growers brought up by two large companies I'm not going to name. And this year they canceled all those trips. So the
Wow.
Brazilian growers didn't come up. And I'm kind of like, well, why didn't they? Like, is that a story based on the North American companies that typically bring them? Or is that a comment on what's going on in South America, not wanting to spend the money to come? I don't know. I really don't know. But I actually think it was more than 5 years. I think I've been talking to this group for nearly a decade. These two different groups for nearly a decade.
Hmm.
And I didn't get to see them this summer. And they didn't come. So it wasn't me, it was them. But I would like to know if that means something a bit more significant about the overall state of things. As it stands, are they going to get to go right away or wait? And I think you and I, unfortunately, have to be patient to see if by September 15th, if there's better signals for rain or if not. So there it is. That's the story.
For sure. We're going to keep watching those moving forward, especially with a lot of the variability that we're seeing in US weather alone for what we're supposed to get versus what we actually get. Of course, it gets to be a little bit more interesting with harvest and that fall application season. So, going to be watching it closely. Always appreciate your insights for this week, though, Eric.
Yeah, you bet.